If you're one of those people who have built up such a tolerance to caffeine that you can down an espresso or energy drink and be fast asleep 10 minutes later, this video is for you. Because we finally have some data highlighting how it is not the falling asleep part to which this stimulant causes its disturbances to. It's the when asleep part. Data which I hate to say is probably gonna make all those no caffeine after 12 p.m. people grin a I told you so grin. Let's check it out. Yo, yo, yo! What is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftandbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic way. Listen, I like a good cup of joe as much as the next guy, and drink it pretty much every day. But knowing that the neuronal stimulating compound it's known for, caffeine, works its magic by binding to the same receptors in the brain that are there to receive the sleepiness signal, a natural cellular byproduct called adenosine, which accumulates the longer that we are awake, certainly makes you wonder, what else could it be doing up there when it's abundant in our cranial cabinets as we nod off into dreamland? And the truth is, although the average half-life of caffeine, or the time it takes for our body to break down and remove half of it from circulation, is around 5 hours, this mileage varies from person to person, going all the way down to about 2 hours and all the way up to about 10, depending on the individual and their metabolic health. And it's this uncertainty that has been the reason behind why you typically hear the recommendation from longevity gurus far and wide to stay away from caffeine after 12 p.m., as this timing provides a nice 10-ish hour buffer for this stimulant to be broken down and minimizes the potential impact it may have on one's sleep. And I say potential on purpose, because beyond messing with someone's sleep onset, aka being able to fall asleep, we really don't have too much conclusive evidence on what it really does to all of the restorative and regenerating functions of sleep. Because of course you remember from our fully loaded How to Sleep playlist that this overnight blackout is so much more than just going unconscious for 7 to 9 hours. And that clarity is exactly what this new study sought to investigate. Let's dive in. Researchers out of the University of Montreal sought to understand the effects of caffeine on the brain, specifically focusing in on its impact during sleep. Because this sleep thing is the mandatory for biological business process, which is indispensable for physical and cognitive recovery, the consolidation of memories, and the maintenance of overall brain integrity. So, figuring out if the most commonly supplemented drug in the world affects it only makes sense. To do this, they deployed a robust, double-blind crossover design, which I think we can all tip our sleep hats to. They had 40 participants, half of them aged 20 to 27, and the other half 40 to 58, placing them through 2 non-consecutive nights of lab sleep monitoring. And during one of these nights, they administered a moderate caffeine dose of 200 milligrams via a capsule, equivalent to about 1 to 2 cups of coffee, while the other night the participants were given a placebo, or a pill which looked just like the caffeine pill, but with no caffeine. The catch here being the double-blind part, meaning neither participant or researcher knew who got what each night. Exciting, I know. And during this overnight slumber party, the participants' brains were monitored via the gold standard of sleep measuring, an electroencephalography, or its abbreviation, which we'll go with from here on out, an EEG, which essentially is a bunch of nodes that go directly on the scalp, providing visibility into the dynamic and rapidly changing brain states that occur during the different phases of sleep, organizing and characterizing them to produce an accurate picture of the individual's overnight state. And I know what you're thinking. Sounds expensive. Because it is. But that's what makes studies like these so valuable. And 2 of the main metrics that researchers honed in on to measure these brain states was brain complexity and brain criticality, which are 2 theoretical metrics used to measure the state of brain balance, identifying if it is leaning towards order or chaos, with the happy medium being where brain activity is both organized and flexible. Because in that state, the brain is functioning to which modern research suggests is optimal, processing information efficiently, adapting quickly, learning, and making decisions with agility. At least, this is what we know the case to be with wakefulness, which sets the stage to see what the hell happened during sleep. Here's what they found. First off, on the complexity front, the results consistently demonstrated that caffeine ingestion led to a significant increase in all measured EEG complexity. Interesting. But what about the criticality part? Well, on that front, the researchers observed caffeine-derived changes, indicating a shift in brain dynamics towards a more chaotic state. A state which, like mentioned before, is theorized to optimize brain sensitivity, adaptability, and information processing efficiency. Kinda sounds good and bad at the same time, doesn't it? Hold that thought. We'll talk more about it in just a minute. But first, what about the different stages of sleep? How are they affected? Well, the researchers observed that these caffeine-induced alterations in brain signals were most pervasive and pronounced during non-rapid eye movement sleep, or the deepest sleep and most restorative part of our 24-hour day, indicating a shift towards a more wake-like state during non-REM sleep under caffeine's influence. You don't say. So, what about age? Did that play a role? Well, the research team also observed some age-related differences when it came to REM sleep, or rapid eye movement dreaming sleep, noting that younger adults exhibited a significantly greater complexity or activity response to caffeine during REM sleep compared to the middle-aged participants, meaning the caffeine seemed to impact them more, making researchers hypothesize that this may be to the naturally higher abundance of adenosine receptors in young people compared to older people, suggesting that young people may be affected more. Interesting stuff. I know. And ultimately having the researchers conclude that moderate caffeine intake results in a significant increase in EEG complexity, with these effects predominantly observed during non-rapid eye movement sleep, indicating that caffeine promotes a shift in brain dynamics toward increased neuronal excitation and a closer proximity to a critical regime or chaos. Translation: caffeine before bed makes the brain appear more like it does in an awake state while it's sleeping. Begging the question, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, to be honest, I'm not sure we know for sure. However, the more relevant question in my eyes is this a neutral thing or is it a bad thing? And that brings about an interesting discussion, because as we saw, this study suggests that caffeine pushes the brain towards a chaotic state during sleep. And if this state is theoretically associated with optimal information processing, sensitivity, and adaptability, which is generally considered beneficial for cognitive performance and neuronal resiliency in a daytime environment. But as we know, we ain't talking about daytime. So the key question is this optimal processing state during sleep a good thing or bad thing for our long-term brain health? And does it interfere with the fundamental restorative processes that are unique to sleep? Because as we know, the brain's needs during sleep are profoundly different than the brain's needs during wakefulness. It's a time where essential functions such as metabolic waste clearance, synaptic homeostasis, and the consolidations of memories happen, processes which may inherently require less activated and processing-oriented states. And if caffeine maintains a state of heightened readiness during sleep, it could paradoxically undermine the restorative functions. And we all remember what happens when you mess with sleep, right? You basically mess with every cellular and metabolic function in your body. And ultimately, in the big picture, the rate at which you age. So I think we can all agree that this is an area where we'd all like a little more research. So to all those sleep researchers out there, keep rocking on. And at this point, the discussion is really just some food for thought, or sweets to dream on. Okay, bad joke. moving on. That being said, in my eyes, research like this just reiterates that the going to sleep aspect of caffeine is not the sole nor best gauge to use when estimating its potential impact on your Z's. You gotta consider the unconscious effects. Thus why I stand by my caffeine strategy, which I break down step by step in this video here. Essentially consuming all of my liquid caffeinated courage for the day before the hours of 10 a.m., giving my body adequate time to break it down for the following 12 hours or so before I hit the hay. A video, might I add, which also highlights the longevity benefits of consuming caffeinated beverages such as coffee and tea in the right way. Yeah, longevity boosting, if done right. Which, in the research we covered in that breakdown, was, ironically, in the morning. Now, like I mentioned before, everyone is a little different when it comes to caffeine metabolism. But where we're not different is in our innate biological need for good, high-quality sleep to operate efficiently at the cellular and metabolic level, and thus feel how we're capable of feeling here and now and in the long run. So in my eyes, it's an easy decision to hedge my bets and do the deed early. But that's just me. I'd love to hear your approach when it comes to caffeine. Timing, consumption, all of the above. So please drop it in the comments below and let's learn from each other. Oh, and if you happen to be watching this in the morning, enjoying a nice cup of joe, cheers. Just make sure you got the toilet paper ready. Good sipping.